Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Who Was Better. This time we're talking about the Japanese warlord Oda Nobunaga and the Chinese warlord Cao Cao. Now, I know it's spelled CAO, but it's actually pronounced TSAO, at least according to, well, whoever. I mean, the Dynasty Warriors game started pronouncing it that, so I said, alright, well, that must be it, whatever. But anyways, these two have a lot of things in common. Basically, they're portrayed as the quote-unquote main bad guy of the two respective games. Although, since Dynasty Warriors 4, Cao Cao has been kind of not. He's been kind of his own deal. Like it just depends on which perspective you look at it. But Nobunaga, yeah, he's been pretty much a dickhead in pretty much every game he's ever been in, except for like a couple where he's the main good guy. I think it's Kessen 3. He's actually a good guy, contrary to what he's normally portrayed as. Now, historically speaking, both of these guys, I would say, were realists in a war against idealists. Like you had Liu Bei. He did legitimately believe in like this kind of land of benevolence type deal, although not necessarily that extreme. He was still a politician. He still knew that he had to, manipulate things. He would have to do dirty things to get what he wanted to, restore everything in the respective country he was fighting in. Nobunaga, on the other hand, he was a realist, but he did vicious things. He didn't give a crap. It's like I'm doing this for the greater good. It's the way he saw it. He saw it as it's an evil deed, yes, but it'll help me achieve my goal and it'll help end this war altogether. But it's like, do the means satisfy the ends? Um, I am going to compare their gameplay perspectives to their real life perspectives, and the reason I say their game perspectives because I know Dynasty Warriors or the Warriors games in general are not known for their uh, deep and uh, complex characters. But I would say these are the only two that go through any. They have more than one depth or one dimension. Because Nobunaga is portrayed as this kind of hard, evil guy, but at the same time, there's a couple of undertones where it's like he actually gives a shit about the people that serve under him. He actually cares about taking care of his people because he knows they're better used to him alive than dead. But in saying that, he also does genuinely care about them. The same goes for Cao Cao. He cares about the people working for him, and he's like, there's a bunch of these guys. They think that just because I have these good intentions that I can conquer everything. And the way he sees it, he goes, it's time for a whole brand new age. The Han is dead. I need to start a whole new dynasty type deal. And another thing these two have in common is they both really rose to power in a battle in which all the odds were against them. In Nobunaga's case, it was the Battle of Okihazuma, where he was fighting against Yoshimoto Imagawa, and I think it was like 60,000 versus like 5,000 or something like that. Anyways, Imagawa had him outnumbered, but in that same sense, Yoshimoto was like, oh, Nobunaga, yeah, that'll be easy, because his dad's dead and his retainers are all talking about surrendering. So he just like, yeah, we'll just chill out here, we'll take our time. We'll see if they decide to surrender, because I can always use a couple of new guys. And Nobunaga's group, they were kind of divided between like, okay, do we fight? Do we surrender? What do we do? And excuse me. And Nobunaga's like, you know what? We're gonna fight these guys. If you don't want to fight, by all means, sit here, relax. I don't give a shit. Me, I'm going out there. I'm gonna go down swinging. What does he do? He basically sets it up to where he sends, I think, a distraction force of like 2,000 guys or something like that, or it was something like a small number of guys to just kind of go at his men, and then his main group, his cavalry, went around, and it was raining, so they couldn't really hear because it was like a heavy storm, and they basically ambushed Yoshimoto's main camp, killed Yoshimoto, captured a bunch of his officers. One in particular was Ieyasu Tokugawa, who went by a different name at that time. Like he was still a lesser lord. He didn't really have much of a name for himself, but that victory right there got Nobunaga a lot of new men. It got him a lot of land, and it basically said, "Oh wow, okay, so Nobunaga went from this like minor warlord of about 8,000 men in one tiny province to a good chunk of men and a good chunk of land." And systematically, he started taking out other clans that were going for like the Takeda. He introduced arquebusiers, which are riflemen, and he destroyed their cavalry. I mean, he just obliterated them. And that's when I think the Takeda were pretty much said and done. It's like, yep, they're ended. Who else did he fight with? He fought against some monks that were rebelling. They were like opposed to him because he was kind of the anti-Buddhist, because he was embracing the Christians that were coming in and like saying, "Hey, we'll give you our religion, we'll give you our guns." all we ask in return is some gold and some of your stuff. And he's like, oh yeah, sure, why not? And then there were other Japanese warlords who were like, nah, that's not for me. Others were like, no, get the fuck out. We'll kill you if you ever show up again. And he basically just said, you know what? Yeah, I'll make use of all this. And he started making use of it. And he revolutionized. Like, he basically had it where there were three ranks. The first one would fire, the second one would fire, while the third one was reloading. And, once the third one was firing, the first one was ready to go, and the second one was reloading. So it was basically constant fire. And that's how we beat the shit out of Takeda. Now, unfortunately for Oda Nobunaga, he gets betrayed by one of his guys, and I'm not entirely sure why. I think it had to do with jealousy, or just like people were talking. There was hearsay, like, oh, somebody needs to take this guy out. He's pretty fucking evil. And Mitsuhide was like, maybe I should. Maybe like maybe this guy really has just fallen from grace. So he betrays Nobunaga. But yeah, Mitsuhide gets his from wow, what's his name? I think his name is Tokichiro Ishida, but he gets renamed to something else. I think it's Toyotomi. Mitsuhide. No, it's not Mitsuhide. Oh, what the fuck was that guy's name? Hideyoshi. That's it. Hideyoshi Toyotomi. Hideyoshi is an interesting guy because he starts off from a peasant, and by the end of the game's storyline, he is the conqueror of Japan. He literally is the one that unifies Japan. Now, granted, his unification doesn't last very long because Ieyasu kind of comes around and says, yeah, no, sorry. Because once Nobunaga died, he was like, I should totally rebel and take the land for myself. And he does, pretty much. That issues in the Tokugawa shogunate, where Ieyasu was the head honcho. Now, getting on to Cao Cao, basically he was a warlord in power, but he wasn't a warlord in a lot of power. Like, he fought against the Yellow Turbans. He was one of the main guys behind the Dongzhuo campaign, and he safeguarded the emperor after Luo Yang was burned to the ground and Dongzhuo was backstabbed by his own guys. And then it came to basically he owned the kind of southern half of the north, and Yuan Shao, they were friends, they were partners for like the longest time, but now it's like they're on opposing sides, and so they go head to head. And Yuan Shao isn't as experienced in combat as Cao Cao is, and the way it works for the conflict that they have is Cao Cao utilizes tactics. He appreciates the advice given him from others. Like, he actually listens to his advisors, whereas Yuan Shao is egotistical, and he's like, oh, I know what I'm doing. No, piss off. And that causes a lot of Yuan Shao's guys to basically defect to Cao Cao, and they say, well, hey, I'll give you this information if you let me join you. And Cao Cao's like, come on in. There's like a multitude of officers that join him. Some of you know the infamous Zhang He, who is very flamboyant and questionably homosexual, but I honestly think Zhang He is a freaking awesome character, just because of the things he says. It's like, this guy's too ridiculous to be taken seriously. And then he also gets, he doesn't get her, but she kind of is captured by his son, and his son's like, hey, you, come be my wife, and she's like, okay, whatever. He also gets, I think his name is Zun Yo, I forgot his name. It's Xunyou, and he basically gives him like a lot of information. Like, I think it was like where his supplies were, the regular routes they go, how many guards are at the depot, and Cao Cao's like, oh, I can really use this. So he sets fire to the supply area, and Yuan Shao's men basically just lose heart because they've already lost two of their main guys. Historically, I think they both just died, although in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms storyline, they're both killed by Guan Yu, but I think only one of them is actually killed by Guan Yu, and the other one's just killed by, like, random soldiers or something like that. So anyway, once that battle's over with, Cao Cao just kind of chills, lets Yuan Shao's sons kind of fight each other, and he just runs around and, picks off what's left, and then now he owns the north. And then from there, he starts having these here and there skirmishes with Liu Bei, who's been kind of jumping from place to place to place. And he had also fought with Lu Bu, who he captured, and was like, oh, should I let this guy live or not? Liu Bei's like, no, kill that son of a bitch. And, Lu Bu's like, hey, I'll serve you. But Cao Cao's like, oh, let's see, you betrayed your adoptive father, then you betrayed Dong Zhuo, then you betrayed Liu Bei. Yeah, no, you're going to die. So he kills Lu Bu. And then from there, he goes on to Chibi, or Chirby, whatever the hell they call it now in the fucking games. I call it Chibi because that's what I grew up with it as. I don't care if it's ignorant of me. It's the way it's been engraved into my head. But anyways, that's how it's spelled anyway, so I don't want to hear none of that crap. But anyways, he That was basically his equivalent of, you would say, Okihazuma or Guandu, where he had the number advantage and he had every bit of confidence going into this fight. Like, there's no way they can beat me. Lo and behold, they beat him. However, he does make a quote that's like, my enemy did not win because they were smarter than me. They won because I made so many fucking mistakes. And he actually was quoted saying, "Oh, if only Guo Jia were here," which is one of his best advisors, like, of all time, like one of his best, absolute best. Although unfortunately Guo Jia had died a year before Chibi, and so he's like, if I had Guo Jia here, I probably would have won this. I probably would have had a better idea what was going on, because he would have probably been able to tell, like, oh, so this guy joined me, even though he's really just a double agent. He's not actually betraying the people he's with. He's getting insider information. He's going to help set it up. And from there, Cao Cao does kind of maintain his empire, but he passes away, and then his son takes over, and then from there, it's all downhill. So looking at the two of them, you could say Nobunaga left the longer-lasting legacy because he had two of his retainers were basically the ones that took over his spot, and they unified it and they kept that shit together. Whereas Cao Cao, his son, politically speaking, was brilliant. He was a brilliant politician. He got the emperor to step down, and he basically said, "All right, now I'm the emperor," which really got the whole Three Kingdoms story, or Three Kingdoms era, going. So you could say Cao Pi was the reason the Three Kingdoms really happened. And then from there, his Cao Pi's, I think, son Cao Rui, I forget his name, but he was basically like, he was nice, he was kind, he treated his people well. The problem with him was he didn't really know how to manage an economy. Like, he spent a lot of money on temples, on concubines, on luxuries that he didn't really need, and the country really didn't need, because they're like, hey, we're at war with two other countries or two other kingdoms. Can we, spend money on that rather than your ego and all that stuff? And then once he passes away, it is absolutely all downhill from there. There is not another descendant of Cao Cao that actually kept the place together, because that's when Sima Yi and his sons just basically said, all right, we're taking this shindig over. And they don't officially take over until, I think, it's 250 some odd, which is like 30 years after Cao Pi had forced the emperor to say, "Yep, nope, you're gone." Now, all right, now I've kind of gone over what happens with these two. Their strengths, not really their strengths and weaknesses, but what they did and what they did as terms of changing the country that they were in. I would honestly give more. I would honestly lean more towards Nobunaga, both in terms of a character and in terms of historical, because historically speaking, Nobunaga did a lot more than Cao Cao did. He did a lot more. He conquered a lot more. Um, and he changed the way warfare worked in Japan. He changed it forever. And he, had the two retainers that basically solidified his legacy in terms of unifying Japan under his little shogunate. Whereas Cao Cao, yeah, he after Chibi, that was kind of the end of his success. So you could say half of his life was spent trying to recuperate losses, trying to gain the ground that he had lost, or just trying to take over more things. And the only real success he had after Chibi was against what's that place? It's basically a little section of land to the north, I think, west, where he had fought a guy named Ma Liang and Ma Chao and all that stuff, and he beats them, and then they go, and then what's left of their group goes and joins Liu Bei, but he also gained a couple of guys himself. But overall, I mean, that was the last real major victory he ever had. So, tell me what you guys think. I mean, are you more for Nobunaga? Are you more for Cao Cao? If you played Romance of the Three Kingdoms or Nobunaga's Ambition, any of those types of games where there's actually some legit depth to them, as opposed to just, oh, they can fly in the air and shoot fireballs out of their eyes and all that other crap. So let me know which one you prefer. And like I said, my personal vote is Nobunaga Oda. But by all means, if you think that Cao Cao is better than Nobunaga, please, share your thoughts as to why that is. It's about. I figured it was just about time I made another one of these, and I, kind of went away from the whole supernatural, even though these two, like I said, shoot fireballs out of their eyes in the games that they're in. But that's besides the point. So anyway, folks, let me know what you think.